Guys, it's your girl Ariza. Yes, your test prep guru, your personal hype squad, whatever you need me to be to help you pass this LCSW or LMSW exam. So many of you have been following me for a while and you can kind of see the various videos I'm doing, and I do send a lot of information in my community. I'm throwing questions in there daily, case studies, all that good stuff. And if you're in the course, I'm breaking it down with you at least twice a month where we're doing our coaching sessions so you can get more in depth and figure out what it is you need. Now, I've had a lot of people reach out to me recently and say, look, the group is great. I love working with groups. However, when it comes to this test, I'm kind of stuck and I need a more individualized approach. So yes, we decided to break it down and we're doing private tutoring. So I have a few private tutoring clients now that work with me weekly for 45 minutes, an hour, and we're just honing in on what you need so you can get to what you need to succeed. But anyways, I'm going to jump into today's video. We're going to be talking about intervention and planning. Yes, it's a little different because intervention and planning is something that we naturally do as social workers, but we don't really know maybe like certain tools and skills and information that we need to basically do that. But today we're going to be talking about this 24% of the exam as it pertains to intervention with clients and client systems. So we're going to be breaking it down. This is all about intervention planning, and I'm going to go through the different phases of treatment. So if you're an LCSW test taker or LMSW test taker, this is perfect for you because you're going to need to know the phases of treatment in order to be successful. And it also helps when it comes to the exam and you have these, what do you do next? Or what do you do first? Or what is the most effective? These type of questions seem to trick people up. And a lot of times when I'm with individuals and I'm helping them through the process of understanding this, it's really a word game. It's kind of like first. When you think of the word first, you're thinking of primary. It is what we do immediately. It's immediate action. It's what takes place before we do anything else. So I'm not going to jump into all the breakdown of those questions. That's something you can do in the course or in the community. And sometimes I'll throw a video out kind of educating you guys on that as well. But for today, we're just going to talk about intervention with clients and client systems. Now, this section of the exam assesses the application of evidence-based intervention techniques, case management skills, and the ability to implement and adjust intervention plans effectively. So I'm going to jump in and first talk about the initial phase. So you want to start strong with RACER. We're going to use the term RACER, and I'm going to tell you what the R, the A, the C, the E, the R stands for in a second. But in the initial phase, this is where the engagement in the planning stage of treatment begins. You're building like a roadmap with the client. You know, you're not doing it for them, you're doing it with them. So some task here would be basically building rapport and trust. Like clients won't do much if they don't trust you. And you want to be able to build a rapport and connect with clients. So that is the first thing you do during this initial stage. And then you want to gather some information. Of course, we got that biopsychosocial assessment. So we want to get all the information that we need for the client to help them be able to see the areas they need improvement on or the areas they need support with. And also for you as the social worker to understand where you might need to start first. And then also in the initial stage, we're identifying the client's strengths and some of the concerns they have. This is an opportunity for them to tell us, look, I'm struggling in this area. I really need help. I really need support. And we can hear their concerns and better decide how we can implement that in a system to help them so they can be effective towards reaching their goals. And then also in this initial stage, this is where we begin to establish those treatment goals. So just to retake, just for you to understand, we're building rapport, we're gathering information, we're identifying the strengths and concerns, and we're also beginning to establish those treatment goals. So now you guys asked me about RACER, right? I threw that out at the beginning. So let me tell you how we can use this framework, RACER framework, to kind of understand this differently. The R stands for risk. We're going to address any safety concerns immediately. So if it's any suicide ideation, homicide ideation, any domestic violence, any type of abuse, we want to address that immediate situation up front. So that is where the R comes in at RACER. And then A, assessment. We want to gather all the comprehensive clinical and contextual information we need so we can better help this client. And then C, the client views. Yeah, I'm throwing that C in there. This is where you honor the client's perspectives, their values, where they have self-identified some problems and issues that they're having. And then the E, that is empowerment. That is where we're going to build up the client's sense of urgency for them to understand, like, this is what I need to do. I know I got what it takes. I can do this, and feel like they have the support so they can actually get the help they need. And then we're also going to normalize them asking for help. A lot of times with clients, it's not that they don't want to get the help. They just feel like asking for it is not normal or is a sign of weakness. So in this stage, we want to empower them and build them up so they can feel like this is what they need to do so they can get the help they need. And then the R, the last R in RACER is rapport. Without this, nothing sticks. Nothing at all. You can engage with a client all day long, but if they don't connect with you and you don't have that rapport, you're not going to get far. So on the test, you always want to choose answers that engage, that assess, or clarify. Not solving just yet. Remember, we're in the what stage? Initial stage or initial phase. And in this phase, we're engaging, we're assessing, and we're clarifying what is actually going on as we're building that connection with the client to see how we can help them solve the problem a little later. But right now, we're in the initial phase. All right, so let's talk about the middle phase. What makes people move? Like, we want to talk about the presenting problem. We want to look at like the clinical issues that are going on, all that kind of stuff in this section. This is where the real clinical work happens. This is where the change, the insight, the skill building. This is what's taking place. And remember, we're in the middle phase. Some key tasks here are implementing the treatment plan. Absolutely, that is the roadmap to get the job done. We have to make sure we have a treatment plan. We also want to teach coping skills. During this stage, the client is actively involved in treatment and working towards things. So we want to make sure that we're implementing some type of coping skill to help them be able to act and do the things they need. We also want to address core beliefs, core behaviors, and some patterns. If something's going on that's not right and it's a little iffy and it looks like it's going to prevent them from getting to where they're going, we want to address it right then and there in that middle phase of treatment. And we also want to monitor the progress. We want to make sure what we're doing and the information we're providing and how we're helping the client is working. And if we need to revise some goals, because remember, we start that treatment plan process here, this is where we revise the goals as needed. So a universal treatment plan formula here that I want you to think about is PP, the presenting problem. We want to focus on reducing the primary issue at hand. And then CE, we want to develop some coping strategies, some effective coping skills. We want to focus on increasing those positive coping strategies so the client can get to where they're trying to go. And then, of course, we need those social supports. Strength or an increase in social support systems is what we really, really need. So we have the P for presenting problem, the C for coping skills, and the S for support systems or social supports, however you want to classify it. But this is what we need to have when we're working on the treatment plan to make sure the client is getting what they need and they're getting it done effectively. So on the test, if you're working with a client and they're in the middle stage of treatment, you want to choose like change-oriented answers. You want to look for like CBT. You want to look for problem solving. You want to look for behavior modification, some psychoeducational stuff. That's what you're looking for when you're looking at the answers, because you're in the middle phase. This is when we're actually treating the client and actually putting in the work. So what are we doing? Intervening, interventions. That's what's taking place into middle phase of treatment. And the reason I want to pause for a moment here, the reason I want to emphasize this is because people get tricked up with what do you do first? What do you do next? Some of these things, if we just take a moment and just think, close our eyes and just think about what's happening in this situation and in this scenario, how we would best help a client if we are a great clinician. Because remember, if you're taking the exam, you're working towards being a licensed individual. So if you're LCSW, a great clinician. If you're LMSW, you're a master level clinician, and you're actually making sure that you can do things on that level. So it's obvious that if we're in the initial phase of treatment, the certain things just take place. We're not treating a client there. We're actually getting all the data, getting all the information. We're assessing, we're building that connection. These are things that you would do automatically if you're meeting someone. Think about going to a doctor's office. If you walked in a doctor's office and the doctor said, take your gown off, take your clothes off, put the gown on, I'll be back. I'm like, hold it, wait a second, you trying to just jump right in. You want them to come in. Hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so. Nice to meet you. How are you doing? What are some of your concerns? What are you here for? How can we better assist? Great. Then in that middle phase is when they start putting in the work. That's when we start intervening and doing some things. And that's where the doctor might say, okay, I'm going to step out the room now and I'm going to ask you to put on your gown so we can search a little bit deeper and see what's going on. I'm going to, take your temperature and all the stuff. They're intervening now because they have already built some type of connection with me where I feel comfortable enough for them to take it to the next phase of treatment. So just think about things in that level when you're trying to answer a question and you're trying to figure out what should you do in that moment? What should you do next? All right. So the last phase, yes, phase 3. As you notice, he's only had 3 phases. You have the initial, the middle, and the late phase. And I want you to think about this. See if this strategy or this way of intervening with clients or working with them helps you when you're taking your next exam or you're taking a practice exam, not the real thing. We want to practice first to make sure this makes sense and you're able to apply it before we jump in and do the real thing. You got me? All right, I'm sure you do. All right, so the last phase, we want to end gracefully with the client. This is all about closure. We have put in all the work. We built that connection. Now it's time to see, is the client going to regress or are they going to express the fear of ending? So they kind of like, man, I'm not ready for this. I don't feel like I can do this on my own, or, I don't feel like I have the resources, the skills. This is where you go, hold it now. We've been working on this thing for quite some time. You got the resources, you got the tools, you got and we got to remind the client of where they are. So sometimes the clients may progress or they might be fearful that things are ending, and this is all a part of the termination process. So it's not necessarily a session, this is a process. So don't think about it as the last session with the client. This is the last phase of treatment when you're working and engaging with the client towards these end goals and these end things that you do during the termination process. So some key tasks here. Are you studying for the LCSW or LMSW exam? Don't waste time on the wrong prep. Try my test prep program for free with a full module that gives you the real strategies, the real practice, and real results. Plus, you get access to my exclusive test prep community where you'll find support, study material, and accountability. No risk, no stress, just results. Click the link in the bio so you can get ready to win with the winning team. Reviewing progress and goals. You want to address any termination emotions. So if they're scared, fearful, happy, whatever it may be, you want to address those emotions then. You want to also plan for continued growth. You want to remind them you've came a long way and you've done an amazing job. And we want to continue you going in this direction. So this is what it will look like. And then you also want to put some things in so you can do some relapse prevention. We don't want the client to feel like they are on the verge of relapsing or going backwards and not feel like we put the tools in there to help them get to where they're trying to go. So we're going to use the feather framework. Your girl's always throwing something out there for you, but this is actually something that I have adopted from a test prep process that I use pretty much over a decade ago that was really helpful and instrumental in me passing my exam. So I took some of the tools and some of the strategies that was helpful there and just kind of build on it. So yes, as we talk about this, the feather framework is kind of adopted from one of these other test prep, and I don't actually have the name of it. I like to give credit where credit is due. But I think it's the AATBS. It's they have like these memory aids and guides and all this kind of stuff. So it's really helpful with me passing my exam. I would tell people that it's been we almost hitting 15 years, but it's been about 13, 14 and a half years, something like that. I don't know. I forgot. Over the 10-year mark when I've taken the exam, but that's something that I use. So one of the frameworks that I've adopted was the feather framework. And basically when you think of feather, think of these tools. F is for follow-up. This is where things can get rough. Who will I reach out to? What do I do? This is kind of a follow-up plan that you'll create with the client. E, you want to empower. You want the client to trust themselves with moving forward, knowing that, hey, I have the tools, I have what it takes, and they feel comfortable moving forward in that direction. And then A, you want to acknowledge the gains and how far they come. A lot of times we just need to be reminded, like, damn, we came a long way. And sometimes the clients need to hear that, and that will help them in their process. The T is termination syndrome. Expect the emotions. Let's talk about it. People are scared. People are angry. People are dealing with grief. These are normal things that happen in the termination process. So you want to be mindful of it and know how to help the clients work and process through these emotions. And then the H, handle emergencies, provide contacts, plan a crisis intervention plan. You want to have all of this stuff written out for the client so they know that, look, if emergency happens, this is what you do. Because remember, once you discharge a client and you're not working with them no more and you kind of terminated them, they normally don't come knocking on your door calling when they have an emergency. So you want to make sure they have the tools so they can do that on their own. And then the last letter in feather is R. That is the referrals. That is where we're going to connect them with ongoing service, ongoing support. Maybe you've been seeing the client for outpatient therapy and you feel like they've been doing well. So maybe you want to graduate them into some support groups out in the community that they can attend once a month. I don't know. Maybe a client was receiving intensive in-home therapy, and now that they are graduating from that process, you want them to do outpatient, which is something that's less intensive. So there's so many different things. You have to understand where your client is, where you're trying to get them to go, and understand that there's certain referrals and certain other services that would benefit them in the process. So guys, on the test, make sure when you're looking at the last phase, or should we say the termination phase or the late phase, and you're looking at the feather, to make sure you got that all together. I'm going to show that on the board too. You want to make sure you're choosing reflection. You want to make sure you're choosing planning, and you want to make sure you're using a transition base. Whenever you're looking at the answer, you want to make sure that the answer deals with those types of things, the planning, transition base, not necessarily treatment goals, because we're doing that where? Yep, you got it. In the middle phase. Right now we're at the last phase, the late phase, the final phase, the termination phase, however you want to label it. But these are the times when the client has pretty much finished treatment and we're trying to make sure that they're doing exceptionally well in the ending phase of their journey. So when it comes to some test tips, always think, what phase are we in with the client? Are we in the initial? Are we in the middle? Are we in the late phase? You have to think about that, because picking the wrong intervention during that phase is obviously going to lead to the what? Wrong answer. Absolutely. So you want to make sure you pay attention to it. You can use your frameworks to eliminate distractors. You can identify best fit responses. If there's a crisis, a risk, or a safety issue, what is the first thing you do? Safety first, baby, all the time. You always want to first prioritize any safety issue. So if it's a crisis, if there's a risk, if there's homicidal ideations, suicide ideations, their question is automatically asking you or telling you something like that. You know the answer deals with safety first, so you go to that answer. I put a question in my community earlier this week or last week, and it was talking about an individual reported, that a family member got rough with them. And the response was like, having them elaborate on what that means to them, got rough with them, so we can have some context. But also in the same question, the client can say, so-and-so hit me. Those are two different things, two different situations, two different circumstances. Both of them require us to look into it further. One, we're going to go all out and we're just automatically calling APS or CPS. But one of them, we might need to clarify some things first to see what they meant by that statement before we jump out and refer or do a referral to CPS or APS. So really pay attention to the words, the verbiage that is being used in these test questions. Because remember, I can't emphasize this enough. ASWB is not trying to trick us up. They're not. They're trying to get as many social workers as possible. So they want to make sure you're successful, but there's a certain way that we must think and a certain way that we must be. So to give you some context, when you're taking the clinical exam, the answer is, there's always one right answer and there's a few plausible answers. Now there's three options. There's probably one plausible answer. A plausible answer means it's pretty much right and I could go here, but it might not be the best answer for what they're looking for. Because at this stage in the game, they expect for you to be like a master level individual when it comes to whatever test you're taking, meaning that you know and think like an experienced person. Whether it's the LMSW or the LCSW, you are kind of like the cream of the crop. You no longer just have your master's, you have elevated into a license that says that you know how to differentiate something that you would have done maybe while you were in graduate school versus what you do once you're finished with graduate school. And then for the licensure, they want you to take it a step further. They're like, look, you've been playing this game for a while. You've been in supervision. You've been working with other clinicians. You've been honing in on your craft. You know how an experienced, licensed individual thinks. And that is what I need you to do. Put on your thinking hat and think. And that is pretty much how the test is geared and how it helps us to understand how we need to be answering and how we need to respond. They are expecting the best of the best. So when you show up and you take that exam, make sure that you have your thinking cap on and you're really honed in on not necessarily what you would have did 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years ago, but what you're going to do in the here and now that you've gained all of this knowledge and all of this understanding, and you know what it means to put safety first. You know what it means to intervene. You know what it means to be ethical, or how you would handle something in an ethical situation or ethical dilemma, because you've studied and you've mastered this information. So now it's time for you just to put your foot down on the floor and go to work and pass this exam. So just a quick recap, make sure you understand that these are the 3 phases. You have the main goals that are done in an initial phase where you're building rapport. That's where you're gauging, assessing, building trust, and all that kind of stuff. And you're planning like what's going to be the next steps. Then you have the middle phase. That is where you're actually treating the client, teaching the client, tackling their presenting issues. And then in the late phase, that is where we are empowering, reflecting, and preparing them for what it looks like post services, post therapy, post group, whatever type of treatment they were in. These are the things that you would do to make sure your clients are successful and they get what they need. Thank you for rocking with me for this whole video. I hope you made it all the way to the end. And if you did, and you're not a part of the community, I don't know what is happening. I don't know what you're waiting for, because the community is growing and growing and growing. I'm super excited right now. I'm managing the community on my own, but I do have some fellow coaches that also will be joining the community to kind of help me to get it more engaging. And also for the course, and also for those that are getting private tutoring, we have everything you need to be successful. It's just a matter of where you are in the process. So at the very minimum, make sure you join the community. Make sure you schedule a quick welcome call with me, about 5-10 minutes, just to see where you're at. Maybe you don't even need a course. Maybe you've done every course in the sun and you just having a hard time with some other areas. I can have a conversation with you and help get you in the right line to be able to be successful. There's a lot of people joining the community and they're taking their tests within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It doesn't matter. I can bless you with some knowledge and some information that's going to help you get to the finish line. Because I don't care if you're a part of the course. I don't care if you're a part of the community or part of this YouTube channel. I'm invested in you. I'm invested in you getting your license and getting to where you need to be so you can be successful, because I'm so excited to have all these future LMSWs and LCSWs that will be able to share the room and share the space and provide information for all the next generation of people to come. So you have an amazing day. Thanks so much for sticking with me. If you have any questions, make sure you ask me in the chat section in the community. It's really hard for me to respond to you guys with long answers on YouTube, but you know, I try. Have a good one. To the next one.